All right, we're back. Next chapter, planning your retirement story. And you have a big say in what that story says here. I'm your co-host, Doug Turnbull, with the host of this deal, Stephen Sabo, financial advisor, Executive Financial Group. They're in Butler, Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh. And so helping out the Keystone State for sure. Get in touch with Stephen and the team at executivefinancialgroup.com or go to dial them up, 724-283-2806. And you can find them on YouTube and Facebook as well. You can even email Stephen at executivefinancialgroup.com if you so wish. With that said, Stephen, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Doug. Yeah, it's a beautiful day out. You know what? It's been a rainy spring here in Pittsburgh this year so far. So we're getting some sunshine this week. I'm really excited about it.
I love the sunshine. Summer's my favorite time of year. All sorts of good trips, good travel, and things like that. And if you missed our past show, Stephen talked about some of his travel, but we also talked about the importance of a mid-year check-in with your advisor, and we're not going to let that go. It's right. Easy to let things coast, especially if you're at the age where you have required minimum distributions coming up and things like that. So be sure to, if you don't have an advisor, get in touch with Stephen and his team, or maybe just let that be a reminder to get in touch with yours and don't get behind on some of that tax planning. That was in our last episode, and episodes before that, we also discussed how time moves quickly and it's worth having a plan, and also how fear should not influence those plans as well, and a courageous story of someone with cancer there who's battling that. So all of that can be found on Apple and Spotify and under the podcast tab at executivefinancialgroup.com. Today, it's going to get fun. Tariffs, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, really ever since President Trump's election, we've been talking about tariffs, because they were a big part of what he was talking about. Early April, they got announced, but then there have been all sorts of deals that have been cut since then. All right. And the latest deal is that a court of appeals in the federal district has overturned the U.S. Court of International Trade that had stopped the massive tariff order. All right. So it kind of reminded me of the whole Wayne's World. They play hockey in the street and then they have to pull out of the way for a car and go game off, game on. Reminded me of that, Stephen.
Yes.
You've seen Wayne's World, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was a classic for us back in the day. Wayne's World was hilarious. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Much like this podcast. Party time. Excellent. Yes.
That's right.
That's
right.
But it reminds me, because not only have we seen just the whole thing, and by the way, the U.S. Court of International Trade, even what the Court of Appeals said had to stop, that was only a certain part of the tariffs. It wasn't the whole thing.
Yes.
So there's so many ins and outs to understand, but we don't know. Every country and different types of products are having all these different negotiations as to what is tariffed or not. Now they're even talking about a rescission tax on money that people send to other countries to pay their families, like particularly in Latin America. So it's all over the place. The point is they could change on a dime. Even a post on social media could change things on a dime, Stephen. And since that affects the markets, what are some steadier tools that people can have in their retirement portfolios that are a little bit less dependent on potential market volatility?
Yeah, it's one of those things, Doug. It's just crazy what we've been seeing, especially with these tariffs. It's on, they're off, they're changing. Now it's lessened. It's just certain products. And like you said, it can cause a lot of confusion, and it causes the markets to do a lot of this up and down. They're, changing constantly from one day to another. And for a lot of people, that emotional roller coaster is not something that they want to be on. So it causes either people to panic and get in or pull out whenever they shouldn't be, or it causes people to sit on the sidelines when they don't necessarily need to be. If you have the right plan in place, you shouldn't have to worry about all these ups and downs. The stock market is we look at it, it's a longer term thing. We're not day traders. We don't sit here and constantly shift in and out of stuff all day long for people. We look at it as a long term goal, and we're going to ride the waves. And if you have a plan that's tailored to you, then you shouldn't have to worry about it. Maybe you have your income, everything's taken care of. And so the rest of this can go up and down. If there's a plan for the money and you need it, then we're going to have that set aside and in place. But, some of those things that we use for people, especially in retirement, is, and I know I've talked about them before, and I know that they can get a bad rep, but if used properly, and we use them all the time, are fixed indexed annuities. You insure all kinds of things in life, right? You insure your house, you insure your cars, you insure your life sometimes, right? Why not insure your retirement? And you can do that with a fixed indexed annuity, transfer the risk onto an insurance company and allow them to deal with it. In the way that they work, they have these index accounts, right, within the annuity. And you can go into those and they kind of, mirror, say, the S&P 500, right? And there's all kinds of different ways, a cap, participation rates. There's all kinds of different ways that you could be credited interest, but you're basically following a stock index. And what's cool about them is you can earn more than, say, fixed rates, right? Because you can participate in the market on the upside. But the coolest part about them is if the market were to go negative and go backwards, your floor is zero. So you're not going to go anywhere unless you're pulling money out. And that is wonderful, especially for people in retirement and especially in markets like this where they're constantly moving back and forth and back and forth. It kind of smooths that ride out a little bit for you and it takes the emotion out of it because you say, hey, look, if the worst that's going to happen is I earn zero, that's not too bad. If the market's dropping 10, 20, 30%, something like that, where you could really be in trouble, especially if you're taking an income. They're great for providing that. So there's a lot of uses for them. And we use them quite frequently for people in retirement.
And they have a lot of different tools as well. So the fixed index is the one that operates the most steadily, right? And right. People may not love annuities because they have less rate of return than some other tools.
Sure.
But again, the principle is preserved. But within annuities, you can also get different riders and things like that
Absolutely.
Can determine how much income you have when or other things that kick in when you have certain needs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of stuff. You mentioned an income rider and things like that. You can basically set up your own, like a personal pension where you're getting a check for the rest of your life, and sometimes even beyond that, maybe your spouse continues to get a check after you're gone. And so, there's a lot of use for them. Not only that, there are provisions in them sometimes that allow for long-term care. They might, be able to help you with that. And there's a lot of nuances to them and there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. So you need to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're getting and that it's from a reputable company. And you're going to get what they're promising you. And, that's why it's so important to work with somebody like me and come in and say, hey, you know what, Stephen, I heard about this fixed indexed annuity thing. And somebody told me that, I'm guaranteed to earn 15% a year. And that's not always the case, and you need to make sure. And I think that's a reason that these things have gotten a bad rap in the past is because people that were putting people's money into them, they weren't telling them the whole story. And that's important. You need to work with somebody that's going to have your best interest at heart and say, hey, we're going to use them for this. But that doesn't mean that that's the only tool that we have available. But this makes the most sense in this situation. So let's utilize them and let's make sure that we're using them correctly. And, more importantly, we need you to understand all of it as well. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make you a professor on annuities or anything like that, but we need you to understand all of the moving parts and pieces because, we want you to be comfortable with them.
Yeah. Comfort is the thing. And that's why it takes time. Mm-hmm. You're not trying to be a salesperson, Stephen. You're helping solve problems, right? You're helping find somebody comes to you with a riddle. Hey, I stopped working. I'm now in retirement. I have this much budget and these many expenses. Mm-hmm. Solve for X, please. Well, you can look at them and help them do that, right?
That's right. I'm a financial planner. My job is to plan. And I have all these different tools, in my tool bag, if you will. And so not all of them are going to be right for everybody, but being able, if you go to somebody and they can only offer you a hammer to build your house, well, you might get a house built, but it might not hold up that well, so we have all the tools out there to build you a financial plan, and we're going to utilize them all depending on your circumstances. And so we want to make sure that we can get the best tools out there. We want to make sure that we have all the right things that we need for all of our clients so that we can build you these plans. Like you said, we're problem solvers. So if you need an income, we're going to figure out the best, most tax efficient way to get you that income. If you need long-term care planning, we're going to show you different ways to do that. If you need legacy planning and estate planning, we're going to do that with the least amount of tax and the least amount of attorney's fees that we can and things like that. So we want to set you up with that, and we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that works for you.
That's the thing is, in the end, it's your retirement. You, the one listening, right. And Stephen and the team are there to help you with that. And by the way, we just mentioned with the whole thing we got into this with is tariffs. On again, off again. What's the market going to do? Well, you build a retirement plan that maybe helps plan for the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, or maybe you're conservative, you play for the worst case scenario and then hope for the best. Then you end up with a little bit more saved. Who knows? The point is that you have to have a plan. If you go by just how you feel in the moment, you would have taken your money out of the market back at the beginning of April and then not been there for the upswing and when things are more expensive to buy back. So get in touch with Stephen and the team. And Stephen, how do they do that?
Yeah, give us a call. Our office number is 724-283-2806. You can go to our website, executivefinancialgroup.com, and find out some information about us. You can get in touch with us from there. Hey, we want to schedule, we want to learn some information, or check out our podcast. We'd love to hear you listening to it. We'd love to see that you guys are enjoying this. That's what we're doing it for. And, you do a great job, Doug, at helping me put it together. We want people to listen. And so, check it out on Apple, Spotify. You can listen to the audio on YouTube. There's all these different ways that you can get it. And the main thing is, get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see if we can solve any of the problems that you're facing.
Take the first step at executivefinancialgroup.com, where you can find all of those things, and dial in the office 724-283-2806 and jump it on Stephen's calendar. Again, mid-year check-in with an advisor, maybe a second opinion on a portfolio you already have to see, does it have too much risk exposure? I mean, you guys can run equations on that and actually have a number, like risk points, if you will, that show that. So, Stephen, I appreciate you explaining it all today once again. And, I look forward to learning more from you soon.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Doug. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is really great. And, I just really love putting this stuff out here for our clients and hopefully future clients. So thank you.
Hey, for sure. And if you know somebody, folks, listening in that you think needs to hear this, be sure and flip them the link. All right, and be sure you yourself subscribe and turn on notifications as these episodes come out roughly every 2 weeks. Well, Stephen Sabo is a financial advisor, financial planner at Executive Financial Group. We thank Stephen for his time. We also thank our producer, Rob Scott, for getting this thing published out there and getting us sounding better, hopefully, right? We definitely try to aim for that. And we thank all of you for listening. So for Stephen, I'm Doug, and thank you so much for listening to Next Chapter, Planning Your Retirement Story. We'll be back with you soon.
Thanks a lot, Doug. I appreciate it.
The opinions expressed by Stephen Sabo and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this podcast station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Virtue Capital Management, LLC, VCM, a registered investment advisor. VCM and Executive Financial Group are independent of each other. Pennsylvania Insurance License number 670429. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Stephen Sabo and/or Executive Financial Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.